Notre Dame is number one.
Notre Dame with a miracle win as the
He's going in. Notre Dame has scored.
Thanks, Brian. Good afternoon. We start Purdue week in earnest. We've got a good football team to prepare for. Again, I think everybody has talked about how our team will bounce back from the trip to Ireland. We had a great shakeout yesterday. Our guys had good energy, and today we'll have a full 2-hour practice. And by my own eyes and talking to our players, no excuses. We feel great. We think the plan that we had put in place over the long term has really worked out quite well, so we can focus strictly on playing the ball game. And as I mentioned, in Purdue, a team that went to a bowl game last year, won its bowl game, is an opponent that obviously is a in-state rival. There's a lot of bragging rights, a lot of emotion attached to it. So we know what we're going to get. Very stout defensive line. Obviously Short and Gaston are two very, very good defensive linemen, as good as that we're going to see during the year. I think offensively, although Marv was in there, Turbush, led their offense late in the year. I think everybody knows he was pretty efficient with the football. He's big, he's physical. They combined that with a big offensive line. Skilled receivers, like all their receivers, they're all quality players. So again, as it relates to our opponent, we respect Purdue. We know them as somebody that's going to play great football against us, and our attention is on ourselves. And the attention focuses squarely on all the things that we have to do better. We were pleased with the win against Navy. There's no question about that. We played the game that I wanted to play. We won it up front, and we took care of the football by and large. So the game plan for Navy was executed by our players. There'll be a new game plan this week, and there'll be one for Michigan State and Oklahoma and BYU. And as we move through each week, we'll get challenged in different areas. And, that's why I respect Purdue. I respect Coach Hope and the work that they've done, a bowl team last year, a physical Big Ten team. But really the focus for me as the head coach at Notre Dame is on our guys this week and what we have to improve upon. And as I mentioned, there's a number of areas that we've got to do a lot of work on this week to get ready for Purdue. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Coach, right down here.
Yes.
Notre Dame, IU, Purdue, Ball State, they all have had player suspensions these first couple of games. Are you seeing in 20 years of coaching anything out of the ordinary with a growing number of suspensions? And add to that, is there something that the NCAA needs to do to allow the coaches to have more direct contact with the players in the summertime that you think might prohibit so many suspensions?
Well, I don't know that it's geographically based relative to suspensions. I think what we're seeing is that we have a game that is out there in the public eye. It's on TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Information is readily available to everybody. And the standards are higher. The stakes are higher. So it's important that all programs make certain that their players represent their programs and universities in the highest degree. So I don't know that is an easy answer in the sense that if the NCAA gave us more time with our guys, I don't think I'd be sleeping in their rooms. I think it still is incumbent upon recruiting the guys that have the character traits necessary, and if they don't, to make sure that you provide them an opportunity to grow as individuals.
Brian, to your right here. You said that there's a list of things you've kind of identified as areas you need to improve on. Could you elaborate kind of specifically for us what you're targeting this week?
Well, I don't know if I want to get too specific other than the fact that it is one game and we did some things very well. I think, turning the ball over is unacceptable at any level. I think defensively, we're now going to enter into a different plan. And so, prepare for option for the last 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. Now you go into your entire defensive mode and fronts and, different coverages, nickel, dime. All of that has to be worked through this week. So I don't know if there's an alarm that I'm trying to set off relative to, hey, keep an eye on it. We're in big trouble here. I don't believe that. There's a lot of things that we weren't able to do defensively that are part of our plan that we need to get to work on. And then offensively, again, a lot of young players playing, a lot of great film to watch, a lot of teaching. So teaching and installation, those are the big factors this week getting ready for Purdue.
Because Navy is such a unique opponent, are you guys maybe a little further along in the general kind of identity of your team than you might otherwise be because you spent so much time focusing on their specifics the last couple of weeks, if that makes sense?
Well, I think each game definitely brings to the forefront some of the things that you perceive to be your strengths. Now, I think I said all along that I felt like our front seven was going to be as good as anybody, and that our strength on offense was the offensive line. I think that was validated through the Navy game, but that's it. That's all that was validated. There are so many other pieces that we've got to bring together for us to be 2-0.
Having evaluated now whatever it is done through one game, kind of where do you feel he's at?
Oh, I mean, there's so many things that he has to improve on, but they're items that we feel really confident that he already has a good grasp on that will continue to evolve. And then there are things that we have to continue to work on with him on a day-to-day basis. This is a process for Everett. This will be a continuation week to week of growing as a quarterback. I guess what I liked the most in a big picture sense was his comfortable place out on the field. He did not seem overwhelmed at any time. He was extremely communicative when we got to the sideline. He could tell me what was going on. Those are all big picture good things after game one.
Coach, can you just provide an update on some of the injury status there with Tate Nichols, Spond, Carlisle, and how they're preparing for Purdue?
Sure. I think those are the three. Obviously, Collinsworth is out, probably for the season, so we don't have to go through him each week. Tate Nichols will go through some individual work today. He will not be involved in any team. Last week, he put a bar on his shoulder for the first time, so he was in the weight room. So he now enters that next stage of re-engaging, if you will, in football-related activities, but he would not be available to us this weekend. Amir Carlisle has been cleared to practice today, so he will be part of our practice rotation. And Danny Spond has been cleared for everything but physical contact. We believe if things go well this week that he'll be cleared for next week. And again, it's contingent upon how he progresses through this week.
You had mentioned Ronnie Stanley as being your third tackle. Nick Martin was kind of in there too. Is he more so back at guard, or?
No, it's really 3A and 3B. If there was an injury on the left side, Ronnie would be the first one in. If there was an injury on the right side, Nick would be the first one in. So they're both threes in a sense that they would be the next man in, depending on whether it was right or left.
The safety position seems so much of a logjam, so many bodies there. Nicky Barati is listed as the number 2 safety there, and Matthias, obviously, he seems to have Jamoris's role. Can you talk about their progress? It will
be a process for all of those safeties in terms of developing them. We were pleased with Matthias and his first collegiate experience, close to the ball, involved in the action every play. We were really pleased. He's a young man that's really growing as a football player. But as you know, we've got a number of young, talented players that we need to continue to work. We had Eliza Shoemate out there, Nicky Barati, Eiler Hardy. We had a number of guys that played limited roles in special teams, but important roles. We'll continue to do that. So each and every week, you're going to see their names popping up, and as they continue to grow and develop, hopefully we get a chance to see them play more and more.
And just as far as the quarterback reps for that second unit, is it pretty much even between Tommy and Andrew?
No, I mean, I think both of them have to get some work, but Tommy probably needs the most work at this time. So, we'll continue. Both those guys will share reps, but it'll be, for me, probably more about making sure that we get Tommy up to a level where, he can be sharp if he's in a position where he had to go into the game. And I don't know he's got enough work yet. So he'll get work at 2 as well as Andrew, and then we'll see how that progresses during the week.
You don't have it in your mind yet, like if Everett got hurt, who's the first man in?
No, not yet.
Thank you.
Brent, to your left, you didn't face a ton of adversity on Saturday, but when you did, when Navy scored to start the second half, you outscored them 23-0 and outgained them 258-64 the rest of the way. You had to be pleased with how your team responded to its first adversity of the season.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Tim, and I think it goes to, your leadership, especially the guys up front. When you're looking at, Martin and Watt and Cave and Golick, and those guys have been there, done that. I think it says a lot about the maturity and the leadership that we have on the football team, and certainly we have built a lot of resolve over the last few years, and our guys know that they're going to have to overcome. We talk about it every day. You're going to have to overcome some adversity. So they took to the challenge, and it was good to see.
If I could ask you a couple things about what the broadcasters commented on. One was that you had seen the way Stanford did things with their 2 tight ends, and that you felt like, I mean, even with Alex Welch being out, you used a ton of 2 tight ends. And I don't know if you'll continue to do that, but what you saw from Stanford and how you felt like you could apply that to your style of offense.
I don't know where that came from, quite honestly. I think what I was talking about is I would love to have Andrew Luck, but he's already taken. He was already taken. I don't know what the genesis of that was. I can tell you that the utilization of 2 tight ends, and I think the tight ends, Fleener from last year, guys that were targeted as first-round draft picks, you got to utilize them, and so they did a great job of utilizing tight ends. We've got some depth at that position. We better do a good job at utilizing them as well.
And another comment they made, you can first verify if it was accurate or not, but that Everett came to you at one point last year and said, hey, what do I have to do to get better? And that you gave him a copy of, well, that must have been in the spring then, but you gave him a copy of Robert Griffin's Heisman Trophy speech. Can you speak to that?
That's close. That's close. What I talked about was that playing the quarterback position at Notre Dame is more than just what you do on the field. And I used Robert Griffin as a great example of an ambassador of college football. And I said, listen, all you'd have to do is take a look at his Heisman acceptance speech and how he was able to articulate his experience and how it was more than just playing the game. And so that was kind of the genesis of the conversation. We didn't come in here and throw on the Heisman acceptance speech and sit down with popcorn.
All right, last thing for me, Devontae Neal, your impression of how he handled his first duty as the punt returner. Like we thought, a little, I thought a little apprehensive at first, settled down as the game wore on, and we'll see him get better and better. He's a very gifted athlete. So it's just a matter of time. He'll settle into that role. He's got a great deal of confidence in his ability. He will not be shaken at all, but he's a freshman, and it's going to take him a couple of games. Just to follow up, the one punt that bounced end over end real hard by him, do you want him to stick his nose in there and try to make that?
Well, it's a good question because the ball nosedived. The wind, there was a directional wind, and that ball, in our opinion, should have been caught at first. And as we watched it, it really was affected. It came down quickly. We would like to field that football in most instances. There's going to be some times where, it's going to take, a different track and just be smart, make sure we don't turn the ball over.
Thank you.
Brian, over here. What was on Stephon Tuitt's offseason checklist to kind of go from freshman to every down guy?
The only word I remember him using was dominate. Dominate in the classroom, which he did this summer over I think it was a 3.5. Just everything that he did, he wanted to be the very best. When we ran 350s, which is some of our summer workouts, each group works individually by their position group, and each one has a separate time. As you can imagine, the O-line are a higher time than maybe the DBs. Stephon was running with the DBs. I mean, he's been on this mission of whatever it is, and it's not just football, it's everything in his life. It's film study. Last night, he's in there film studying, taking notes, and I think just a very, very driven young man right now.
Did he come in? What was his strength when he came in? How much of that is sort of natural to him, and how much did you guys amplify?
Very raw, obviously. Not knowing what he was capable of, we thought we knew what he was capable of. So I think a lot of that has to do with confidence, him being here for a year and seeing how he could excel, not only on the football field, but at Notre Dame and in the classroom. And then once you see that and sense it and feel it, then that fire is lit. And the fire is lit with him to dominate and be the best in everything he does.
I just wanted to ask a question about the media schedule. Obviously, less days of player access, no assistant coaches. Just what was the thinking behind that setup?
Not much thinking. You know, there wasn't a grand scheme to protect anybody as much as I wanted to make sure that our players were focused. Their schedule is so long in terms of their academics and study table and all those things. We wanted to streamline it the best we could.
And the assistants?
Same thing. They're 90 hours a week here. And I really felt like, for me, I could take a lot of that off their plate so they could focus strictly on, at the end of the day, you know, our preparation.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Coach, over to your left.
Yes.
Looked like Cam McDaniel got a little nicked up there in the fourth quarter. Is he back to full health?
No, not yet, but he will be. You know, we expect him to play on Saturday. I think any Tuesday, any back that's run the ball up inside is not going to feel his best, but he'll be able to answer the bell when it's time.
It looked like he had a pretty solid game. Was that what you expected out of him as far as production in the first game?
We did. We knew what we had with Cam. Very solid player, somebody that could play on either side of the ball. You know that you've got a pretty good football player there. Smart, tough, runs hard, as you saw. Really an important player on our football team. Can do a little bit of everything.
I wanted to also ask you about Ishaq Williams, and
yeah.
He looked like he had a pretty good breakout game. Is he the type of guy that can replace the sort of speed on the edge that you lose without an Aaron Lynch?
Well, you know, we don't spend much time thinking about who we don't have, but I will say that his development has been such that it's already put him in a position to be on the field in pass rushing situations, but we saw that this spring. So the Navy game did not bring that to our attention. I just think, again, I think you have a similar situation that you had with Stephon Tuitt, is that here's a young man now who is very comfortable at Notre Dame, understands what to expect on a day-to-day basis, and now really can cut it loose on the football field, as will some of those other freshmen that are a little apprehensive right now. I think we talked about them a little bit earlier. They're going to get comfortable here, and when they do, and they can let their athletic abilities speak, I think you'll see a rise in their play.
We talked in the spring a little about Ishaq getting more comfortable. When was he finally ready to get past just being at Notre Dame and get ready to?
I don't know if there was a particular date. It's every day, you know. When is your son mature enough to make sure that he doesn't wreck the car? I mean, you know, it's just one of those times, you know, sometimes never, I guess. But, and maybe that is for players as well, but there's a maturity that just comes with being here and getting older and growing up and hearing the same message and same expectations. I will say this, the expectations have been high, and he is starting to meet those. He is nowhere near where he needs to be. It's got to be a consistent thing for him, but he's making good progress.
Along those same lines, a lot of freshmen in the game this week, and I spoke about that already, but across all of college football, it seems like a lot more freshmen got action this weekend. Are guys more prepared than they used to be coming in to play right away as 18-year-olds?
You know, I really don't know if that's the case, meaning that they're more prepared now. There's certainly more training. There's attention to, you know, the physical end of things relative to being prepared. I just think that certain classes have needs that freshmen need to come in and help you with, and we had some needs at those particular skill positions.
Brian, just a little tip for you. My sons are older than yours, and there's never a day where you're confident about the car wreck.
I'm glad to hear that. That'll help me in my parental duties.
Just in a broader area with the pass rush, you weren't going against a conventional offense, and there was some passing. Wondered if you could evaluate the pass rush from your front seven in that game and moving forward the potential of this group in the pass rush.
It's so difficult. You saw, I mean, Miller was scrambling for every throw. I mean, he never was comfortable taking a three-step drop for maybe one or two passes. So hard to evaluate. I think we saw some things that we liked in terms of the push that we got from Stefan and Ishak and Prince Shembo, kind of what we expected. But it'll be a totally different evaluation when you go against, Purdue and Michigan State. That's going to give us a clearer indication of that pass rush.
With Tommy, I mean, do you have with him having just been kind of in the individual periods, do you even have a sense of where he is in terms of improvement from the spring?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I have a sense. We're pleased with it, or we wouldn't, move him in a position where he gets some reps as a backup. So we saw some of the things that we wanted in terms of ball security and good decision making, and we'll continue to work on that. But Tommy's a very valuable player to our program. He's got a lot of experience, and we're happy to have him.
Everett and Andrew both talked about his value to them in terms of helping their development, and Everett even went as far as to say, I'm not sure if I would have done the same thing in the same situation. I mean, he just effusive in their praise of him. Can you talk about what you saw from that?
A young man who really handled himself very well in a very tough set of circumstances. And I think we all know that. I mean, he was a great teammate. That's all I would tell you. He was a great teammate. He handled himself the right way.
You've been invested in trying to change the home atmosphere. I remember talking to Jack Swarbrick on the media day, and he said we're in the middle of a culture change. We're trying to change the culture. How do you feel like that's coming, and what would you still like to see along those lines in a better home atmosphere?
No way.
No way?
No way. I went to the Catholic schools with the nuns that had the rulers.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not going to get hit with the ruler again. I think it's up to me to provide a better atmosphere in that stadium. We win games, it'll be nice and loud. Thank you. Nice try.
Okay. And the last thing from me is you jumped into the poll at number 22 in the AP poll this week. Is that something you pay attention to? Is that something you talk about your team, or is it just something that's kind of white noise?
White noise. White noise, yeah.
Brian, center field here. Taking nothing away from your offensive linemen, but do you see any difference with what Harry was able to do with them in terms of their performance this past week?
Yeah, I would never go as far to say it's an offensive line coach. We got a collective group of guys. Now, Harry is an outstanding offensive line coach, and I am so pleased to have him with us. Players love playing for him. But this is about a collective group of guys that are physically stronger, they're more seasoned, and they play very well together as a unit, as a five. It's as good as I've seen in a very short glimpse of what we've done. This is one game. We got a long way to go. I like the way the group plays together. They're not a group that one guy is not on the same page with the others. I think that's, for me, after week one, well coached. They've got a great room in terms of that offensive line dynamic is outstanding with players and coaches. And then I think you've really got some veterans and a very good unit working together.
Did you sense that your running backs maybe appreciated that with being able to hit the hole a little more aggressively, knowing that that hole was going to be where it was designed to be?
Well, we were, obviously in more direct snap, more downhill runs. You know, if you're in the shotgun, you're more east and west. And I think our backs responded. I thought Theo Riddick ran extremely hard, physical. And, you know, I think George is getting there. And we know his ability to hit daylight. So I would say it starts with, you know, we were in a lot more direct snap. And those kids ran really, really hard and physical, and we'll continue to mix that in. Doesn't mean we're not going to run in the shotgun. We are. We'll be able to feature both of those. But it's nice to have the ability to say we've got backs that will run downhill and will run physical.
Is part of that a comfort thing for Theo too? The fact that he was running at running back pretty much the whole offseason, fall camp.
Yeah, and if you really look at it, that's a lot of carries for a guy that really that was his real first competitive 4 quarters of football. I guess 3 quarters of football, and so he was obviously excited about the opportunity. I just think that we all can see that he's very comfortable at the position.
Up to the right. You touched on their quarterbacks earlier. It sounds like they could play both of them this Saturday. Could you just sort of compare and contrast Turbush and Marv a little bit?
They'll run the quarterback more with Turbush than Marv. They'll move the pocket more. Marv is a very good football player as well. Henry as well was a starter there before he hurt his knee. So you've got 3 very capable quarterbacks, and they do some things differently. We'll attack the game plan knowing that we'll have to defend, you know, all of them. But Turbush will definitely be more involved in the running game than Marv was.
And then on the other side, their cornerbacks, Johnson and Allen, 2 very good, very expensive experience. Just talk about the challenge they pose to you guys.
Yeah, I think you put it right. These are 2 guys with a lot of Big Ten snaps, a lot of experience, and they will be. They're extremely athletic. We're going to have to do a very good job of competing for the football and blocking them as well. You know, because we're going to be involved in that process. So, yeah, if you look at their defense, you know, certainly I like their front 4, and I think the 2 corners have a lot of experience.
Brian, up here, just a quick kind of minor injury. Atkinson, did he get kind of dinged up toward the end of the game on his last carry?
George?
Yeah, George.
Yeah, nothing major. He'll be practicing today. Yeah.
With Manti, I think a lot of us, it's surprising that was his first fumble recovery of his career because he's made so many tackles. Is that kind of the next step of his game, or have you guys just not really asked him to make those kinds of plays in the past?
No, he's been in position, you know, to make those plays. I think you're seeing a guy that's going to make those plays now. You know, we were doing some things in coverage, and he had to run with the number 3 vertically later in the game, and did a great job. He's always been very good in pass coverage. And I think he just got his opportunity. Sometimes you're just not in the right place at the right time. We're very confident for him to be on the field in 3rd down situations. We never take him off the field. So, yeah, I just think he got his, and he's going to get more.
And I want to follow up on Dan's question about Ishak, and you'd mentioned body language with him last year, and even going back to high school, he's very reserved, quiet, doesn't always interact with, or didn't always interact with teammates a whole lot. He seemed like a different kid on Saturday. Can you coach up body language, or is sometimes that just kind of how a kid's wired?
No, I would go back to my original response, and he's growing up. He's a kid. And Brooklyn, New York, he's in a very dynamic atmosphere where on a day-to-day basis he's got to bring his A game in the classroom, in the dorms, in the football program, and I think it just happens naturally that you're going to mature because you see that those standards are set for you. And I think Coach Diaco's done a great job of mentoring him as well. I think there's a great relationship there of trust, and I think Coach has done a great job of bringing him up along the way. And it's what you expect from young guys. You want to see him take that next step. I think we're seeing him take that next step.
Just lastly, you'd kind of talked about on Sunday you probably have a better read on your secondary after this weekend, but just what you saw from Bennett Jackson. He's a guy that you and the staff has been pretty high on.
Yeah.
How did you kind of evaluate him out after a second look?
Solid tackler. Pete, it's so hard. You're defending man-to-man, essentially, on double and triple moves. So you look like a center fielder that's had to flip 3 times looking for a baseball. It's so hard because you're not in your back pedal. It's not as structured, so it's harder to evaluate. What we liked about them was their discipline. There are fundamental and technique areas that we have to improve on. Very disciplined, didn't cut guys loose. We slipped on the line of scrimmage on the long play against Kavari. We were in a press situation, but all technical things. So from a big picture standpoint, we leave the game knowing that those guys are going to be able to play our system of defense.
Brian, turnover margin, something obviously worked in your favor this week. It's something coaches, players, you all talk about. How do you coach that behind the scenes?
Oh, man. Every day you're talking about it. Every day it's in your individual drills. You're trying to strip the ball loose. You're talking about taking the ball away. Our opening drill, and you've all been there for our defenses, we're trying to rip the ball loose. And so you got to coach it, you got to talk about it, and then you got to hope that your players, when presented with the situation, carry that coaching and teaching on. And then get a couple of good breaks.
Is that a lot different from last year, a little different? How did that?
Well, we had 3 fumble recoveries on the Navy game. We had 6 all of last year, so it starts off pretty good.
And week 1 to week 2, obviously, coaching cliches, that's where the team improves the most. What are you looking for specifically this week with Purdue?
It's all about our development this week as a football team going into week 2. There are so many things that we have to do defensively relative to getting back to traditional offensive sets and coverages and checks and nickel and dime and all of those things. And then from an offensive standpoint, we're playing now a team that matches up more physically with us. So, there's so many other things that we have to bring to the table from an offensive standpoint. So we'll work on all those things this week.
Following up on the cornerback question, does the fact that you had a young group in competition all camp and had to prepare for an unusual team like Navy, does that help or hurt their preparation for a more traditional passing team like you're going to face this week?
You mean from an offensive standpoint? Or
no, for your cornerbacks. Are they more? Are they better prepared because they had to play on an unusual team, or are they behind the 8 ball because they didn't play against traditional?
No, we did a lot of work before we transitioned over to Navy. So full installation, 2 weeks plus spring ball was all based upon working against us offensively, and obviously we have an offense that can move the ball around the field from an offensive passing, and then we'll work on that more this week. But no, they are well prepared to make the transition.